Alright, welcome back friends. So, today we're gonna break some rules. I'm gonna walk you through the process of how I paint hands, reveal some of the secrets behind painting them, but maybe even more importantly, talk about what we can take away from it. But before we get started, a quick thank you to today's video sponsor Squarespace. From websites and online stores to marketing tools and analytics, Squarespace is an awesome all-in-one platform that lets you not only build your own website from scratch, but also helps you run your business. So, right from the start, the way I approached this little study is different. And that is already the first piece of the puzzle in making these hands look believable and convincing. I don't start with a drawing or a charcoal transfer, but instead I use a brush to sketch out what I'm going to paint. I make sure to use a pretty dry brush for this, because I don't want too much paint building up on the painting surface, especially not this early in the process, but the question is, why do I start this painting by painting with a brush, rather than with a careful drawing? And the answer is that it serves the painting. When our goal is to capture reality on a piece of canvas, we are not only talking about color or shadows or proportion, we are also talking about some of the more abstract features like softness or tension or flow. And although these more abstract features tend to be overlooked by most artists, they are incredibly powerful in helping us create a believable illusion. I would take any of those features over accuracy any time of the day. When I paint hands that look soft and flowing, I also start my painting in a way that emphasizes these features. And drawing with a brush allows me to do that. This way, right from the start, I set the whole feeling of the painting. I'm using a small wood panel that's primed with white gesso for this painting, which is already the second piece of the puzzle that will eventually help me sell the illusion of realism. The hard and smooth surface of a wood panel allows me to create some effects that I wouldn't be able to pull off on canvas, namely clear and sharp edges. But for this painting, it does another thing, and that is, it allows me to make very subtle but very clear color shifts. The paint doesn't spread and bleed into each other like on canvas. On the flip side though, this also makes painting much harder. You need a lot of brush control to get the paint to behave a certain way. You often hear me say that if you want to create softness, you are better served with a canvas panel. And if you want to create sharpness, a wood panel is probably the better option. But what if we need both? Well, in those cases, even though it can be very frustrating at times, I usually tend to go with the wood panel, because at the end of the day, it's just the more versatile painting surface of the two. I'm using a mixture of simple flat and small round brushes, and the oil paints that I'm using are from Rembrandt, Sennelier and Schminke. But this time I'm hardly using any painting mediums, and the reason for that is the wood panel. It's already slippery and difficult enough to paint on, and adding mediums to the paint would only add to this problem. So the hands that I'm painting here don't have much contrast, which makes it a lot harder to create depth and volume. Strong and clearly defined shadows generally tend to make things a lot easier when it comes to creating the illusion of realism. But what these hands lack in contrast, they make up for with color and expression. And as you will later see, they can be even more powerful when used in the right way. So once I have the basic proportions, I start putting down some color. And this is yet another piece of the puzzle. Unlike what you normally see me do and what's actually widely promoted by other artists, I totally ignore light and shadow. Instead, I almost purely focus on color. And while most people would not only say that this is not a good idea, but even the worst way to start a painting, it's exactly what's going to help me to achieve a believable illusion in the end. How you start a painting, or the way you paint, always should be informed by what you are trying to achieve, and not by any principles. There are no one-size-fits-all approaches to painting. And what I'm trying to achieve here is done best when I start the painting in this unconventional way. As I mentioned, the hands don't have any contrast, so focusing on light and shadow doesn't really make much sense here. Then what about accuracy and proportion? Well, accuracy isn't really important either. As long as the overall proportions look right, the details don't matter that much. Hands come in all shapes and sizes, and when painting something like hands, it's actually even better to not paint what you see. Instead, what we want to do is paint what the thing we're looking at feels like. And the idea here is to emphasize certain traits or features by exaggerating them. So contrast isn't important, accuracy doesn't matter that much. What's left then, you might be wondering? Well, what's eventually going to sell this painting are the more abstract features like softness and flow, but most importantly, skin color. And what I mean by skin color isn't actually color. What I really mean when I talk about skin color is the translucent nature of skin. The way that veins shine through the skin, and the fact that depending on the thickness of the skin and the blood circulation, areas tend to look cooler or warmer. And that is all 100% just a matter of color. If you just focus on value and accuracy, you don't get any of that. So the most important thing at this stage in the process is capturing some of this translucency. And how we do that is actually not that complicated. But before we get to that, I want to quickly thank today's video sponsor, Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for my own online portfolio for years now. So when Squarespace recently reached out to sponsor the channel, it was an absolute no-brainer. If you're an artist today, having a great online portfolio is a must. And Squarespace is perfect for that. But Squarespace also offers an integrated commerce and shop system. And that has made my life so much easier in recent years, I can't even begin to tell you. Launching products and processing orders couldn't be easier. So if you are looking to make your own website or want to have a great but easy to manage online store, then check out squarespace.com for a free trial, or go to squarespace.com/alpayaffair to save 10% of your first purchase for a website or domain. So after having filled out both hands, I go back to rework them. To make up for the lack of contrast and shadows, I especially focus on color. And in particular, the very subtle color and temperature shifts between all the different colors of the skin. And as you can see, if you were to ask me which colors I used to paint these hands, the answer would have to be all of them. Because it's the interplay of all those different colors that eventually creates the illusion of translucency. And that in return creates the illusion of skin. I always paint areas either cooler or warmer than I see them. I don't just paint what I see, I always exaggerate it. I often get asked how I see all those colors when looking at skin, and the answer is I don't. Most of the time, I only come to the conclusion by comparison, and that's also what I try to teach people. Don't look at an area and try to figure out what color it is. It doesn't really matter anyway. What matters are the relationships between colors. So, whenever I mix a color, I only compare it to areas that I've already painted, and I just try to figure out if it's cooler or warmer, or more yellow or more green, and that's it. And only after I've put down all the colors, I start focusing more on shadows and form. Because as I've said before, in this case, it's not the form that sells the illusion, it's the color. And from there it's only a matter of diligence. Small adjustments here and there until I'm happy with what I'm looking at. Painting this took me 3 hours, but you can obviously go as simple or as complicated as you want, but the principles are the same. I certainly could have stopped after an hour and the hands would have looked fine too. I also could spend another 3 hours painting and refining them, if I had too much time on my hands. So as so often, the real secret behind making this little painting work here is to think outside of the box and to ignore some of the so-called conventions. Most artists will tell you to stop thinking and to only paint what you see. But I have to strongly disagree with that. A painting never has to look like the reference or real life to be believable. It just has to capture elements of it. And that is one of the most overlooked principles when painting. Painting is not a science. Painting is painting. If you always just focus on the technical aspects of painting and capturing reality and doing everything the right way, you will not only miss out on all the happy little accidents that can happen when painting, but chances are you will end up with something incredibly dull and boring. Because reality can be boring. It often is. Just painting what you see will also only get you what you see. And that is in the best case. I mean, imagine watching a movie, but it's just a recording of life. How exciting would that be? How much money would you pay to see that? The idea is to create something that's inspired by life, and not a copy of it. You use every trick in the book to create something that's more than the sum of its parts. I mean, which game would you rather play? A game where unattended children travel the world with their pets to let them compete in fights against each other? Or Pokemon? Exactly. But with that being said guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all so much for watching, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and yeah, have a good one.